He says, my question is about the mountain bike handlebar width. Since the wheels become bigger and the width of the handlebars also increased. So he's basically, ever since people have gone from 26 to 27.5 and 29-inch wheels, handlebar width has also gotten wider. So I think that what he's talking about, like, is there a correlation there, everything else? And there's not causation necessarily, but anyways, it's just the way things are going. He says, it is pretty normal to see manufacturers selling bikes with 770 to 780 millimeter bars on them. And what would be, in your opinion, the proper width for cross-country riding for a 175 centimeter, 5'7" rider? I'm currently riding 700 millimeter bars, but I'm hesitant. Thank you in advance and 5 stars. So for what we're going to do, I actually asked this question on Instagram for you, Manuel. We got like thousands of responses for this too, which was crazy. And I didn't realize that I don't have a way to export all that data from Instagram. So I'm sorry. I just took a sample size of 175, and 75 of those people were women as well. So then that way, hopefully we can get a good, it's a relevant sample size at the very least in this case. So I have a link for the other people on the podcast, the hosts here, so that you can check out that spreadsheet. And there's a second sheet where you can see that. But producer Aaron, do you want to put the first chart up on the screen so we can talk about this, and hopefully we can get you some context, Manuel? But basically there's a lot of theories on like which bar width is best. And people say like, well, if you drop down to the ground or do a push-up in just the natural position, that should be your bar width. Or people say like, it's all a function of your shoulder width, or it's all a function of your height, or it's dependent on the sort of riding you're doing. And there's no real clear, like, this is the bar width you need. But there's some interesting insights, and just in terms of the consensus that we can see with some of the data that we got from just this quick survey. So this first one shows that there's a pretty wide range, but people usually don't fall below 700. And they usually don't fall above 800, actually more like 780, somewhere around there. So that's usually where people fall. And there is a correlation to people's height, which we'll get into in a bit. And also there tends to be a correlation with people's with gender as well, which is interesting with this. Do you want to go to the second graph, Aaron, so we can look at this and we'll get into more specifics? So if you look at the height for you being a 5'7" rider, 170 centimeters, roughly around there, the average is around 740. But a lot of people just get their bars and they are what they are and they don't cut them. And that's just what they run, right? Cutting bars, especially carbon handlebars, is really scary, like thinking of taking a saw to your bars. So I don't blame people for not cutting them. It's a bit kind of scary there. And you'll see in this data too, that like on the ends of the spectrums, we have a lower sample size. So as a result, you get some outliers, but the trend is there for sure. You start to see that like it increases as people get taller. So for a person that's 5'7", 740 would be pretty normal. Keegan, isn't that what you run?
I only use 720s and I'm about 5'10".
Yep.
I'll let you, and I have some opinions. I'll let you continue on.
Ivy, do you know what you run, and what's your height?
Yeah, I run 740s and my height is like 5'9"
Cool. And the average, so that's about 173 centimeters for people listening across the pond. That's like a 700. So that's the average there is 750. If you just take out gender and you just like run it all the way across the board. Do you want to go to the next slide here, Aaron? So we can check out this one. This is an interesting one to see because what this shows is that it's not just entirely up to the gender does have an influence on this. And if you look, men tend to have wider bars, men tend to have wider shoulders. Yes, they tend to have all of those things, but it's not like a 100% guarantee. Like a lot of people say, they're just like, if you got wide shoulders, you need wide bars, and they say that across the board. So men on average have 758 millimeter wide bars or 760s, and 740 seems to be average for female, but average overall is around 750. And then do you want to go to the next one, Aaron? When you look at the disciplines, this is more, I think, applicable in many cases. And this is where we get into cross country has an average of 740 millimeter width. Trail has an average of 760. And then enduro has an average of 780. But I will point out that Enduro World Series multi-time world champion, Richie Rude, who has tank shoulders, he is a tree stump of a man. He's very broad. He's a big guy. And he runs 740 millimeter bars or 750s, depending on the case. So if he's running really narrow bars like that, it's kind of interesting. Also, Keegan, your national champion, you run narrower bars than most of the cross country riders that we see as well. And what I found across the board with pro athletes, I kind of looked through the list, and if I saw a pro athlete, I took note of it. Pro athletes on almost every case had narrower bars than amateur athletes. which I thought was interesting because pro athletes are usually more like, you're not just running your bars the width that they are, you're actually like making those sort of decisions to trim your bars into the width that you want. Right. And you've probably tested it. So I think that is insightful. And I know it's really trendy to go to ultra wide with the bars, but I don't think that it's necessarily needed. Aaron, can you go to the last one here? And this shows that across the different disciplines that yes, it still goes up, but then it's also different for gender as well. So like average female cross country riders are running 730, whereas males are running 740, and then average males are running 760 with their trail bikes. And then they're running, it's really not that much of a difference for females in that case. They're running around just under 760s, which is cool. So, and enduro is really close. But I personally think that I have ran too wide of bars in the past. And I've also ran too narrow of bars. I think I had like my first bike had like some 680s or something, and they did feel really narrow. Also of note, the narrowest bars that we have were 580s, and it was a guy from Denmark, and he is 6'4" and he runs 580s, which is crazy outlier, like across the board, which is nuts. Right. But I think I've ran some bars that are too wide. And when you run bars that are too wide, not only can you clip things, and I think that's one of the reasons why Richie runs such narrow bars, because he's trying to fit in between narrow gaps and trees with enduro racing, but it also can really make the wrist angle bad if they're too wide. It can really kind of tweak your wrists and put them in an uncomfortable position really long. Why do you run the bar width you do, Keegan? 720.
Yeah, so actually, when I was a young junior, I ran like 580s, and then it slowly got like wider and wider. And I ran 680 for a long time, and then I bumped up to 700, and I was like, yeah, I could maybe try a little bit wider. And I found that 720 is kind of the sweet spot for me, I think. I think in general, like wider bars have just gotten trendy. Honestly, I don't know why. Like, I guarantee you're not going to be faster on like a bar that's like that wide. So I would just try it and be like, if it's not making you faster, then why are you doing it? Like, why would you want to carry extra weight? Why would you want to not be able to fit through narrower gaps? And it's just less, it doesn't do anything better. There's no point in doing it. All it does is make you slower. So I think you need to think like, why am I using bars this wide? And it's hard because you don't want to like chalk them down and be like, oh, that's too much. So I think you want to do it incrementally, but it's always something to think about, especially if you're racing cross country. It makes it a lot easier to pass people. You can get closer to the stakes. You can take different lines through trees. Like sometimes there are races and like where you have to fit through trees, and it's like a tight gap. And if you don't feel like you're actually going faster downhill with a 740, then why not run a narrower bar? It just, for some reason, it's gotten trendy. I think bike manufacturers, it makes sense to sell them with wide bars because then you just cut them to what you want to cut them to. And a lot of people don't realize, oh, I can cut my bars down. So I think it's something to think about. Like, I don't know if it's like a height related thing or shoulder width or whatever it is, as to how wide you should go your bars. I think it's more just a preference, but definitely is like, if you're 5 foot, you definitely don't need bars that are 750. Like they're just not doing anything for you. They're just, I'd argue they're making you slower. So I think you need to think about like what your use is. And it's just like having like more travel on a bike doesn't necessarily make you faster. It's the same with bars. Like more bar isn't going to make you better. So I think you just need to play around and find what works for you and what you're comfortable with and what is fastest. So
the whole point of like wider bars is that if you have wider bars, you can have more leverage and control. But in many cases, is leverage and control the actual limiter, right? Like,
right. There's a point of diminishing return for sure, I think.
Yeah. And if you have a long stem, then that also makes things a little bit weirder as well. Like your leverage, you've introduced like a different leverage ratio because you're making your bars further in front of that center steering axis. So then if you have extra wide bars and then you have a long stem, then you're going to feel like, I don't know, it'd be very awkward. You have a lot of leverage and probably too much, and it might make things feel really nervous. So there is like a sweet spot, I'm sure, but each one is going to be different. And for those that are like angrily yelling right now and typing in, it's all a matter of your shoulder width and just do the push-up test. That's not the case. It totally depends on how you ride, how far forward on your bike you ride. Like Ivy 740s are what feel comfortable for her, right? And it's probably a function of how far in front of the bottom bracket she is or how behind it is. And then the head tube angle, the top tube length, all that stuff, it all comes in. Nate, we mentioned when Lee McCormick, when he came and did the bike clinic with us. And we actually have a YouTube video on that. You can check it out, where we actually went through all the stuff that he taught us. I remember his bars looked super weird. I don't know if you remember that, but they had like a unique bend to them. They were like titanium, and then everything else, and it was like a different color. And it stood out to me. And he was like, oh, I'm very particular about it. I have somebody custom make these handlebars to have the perfect bend and the perfect everything for my wrists and for my position. And it's exactly what I want. And he doesn't have crazy wide bars. He isn't reaching really far out. He doesn't have crazy narrow bars. You know, it's within this same realm of what we're talking about, somewhere between that 700 to 800, but it's just exactly what he wants. So don't be afraid to play with it. Most handlebars now also come with cut marks, where they'll either be at like centimeter increments. Some of them also will have labels on them, which really makes it handy. So it'll say like 760 is here, 720 is here. So you can cut those. And if you want to cut them, just take them to a bike shop and have them do it, because they would be the ones that would be the qualified people to be able to cut your handlebars.
So, or at the very least, buy a tool and a proper saw blade, like one of those guide tools that you just clamp onto your bar, then it has you cut perfectly. Because I've definitely cut bars without those, and gets a little wonky.
It's a little nerve wracking. Also, some
just
of you
use a bunch of tape, and
some of you that responded with like 742. I'm really worried about like how you got to that number and how you cut your bars. Like if you just kind of eyeballed it and hacked away, that's a little nerve wracking, but hopefully that helped. And I know roadies, you're probably like, what the heck? It's kind of the same thing that we're talking about with road bars, though. There are differing widths and differing reasons that you'd want to do it. Instead of dodging trees, it's fitting through packs or more aerodynamic. And there's a lot of things to consider with your bar width, and maybe just don't take it for granted. Think of play around with it if you can, and see what different things feel like. Like Nate, you run narrower bars than people would suggest, right?
On road, yes. I just love how we went through this whole thing. You never once asked me about my mountain bike handlebars, because I don't even know the width. Like, I don't know. It's whatever stock I ride, and it feels fine. I have of the opinion that it's a little, I don't know. You guys are so persnickety about all these things, and I don't notice a difference at all. Like, I move my hands too, like where I'm holding kind of on my bike, and I'm like, oh my gosh, my handling's gone now. I don't know, but people are very, very particular about it. But yeah, road, I go very narrow, and that actually I go narrow because it's more comfortable and my neck doesn't hurt as much on long rides. If I go too wide, for some reason, it engages my traps too much, and I've got little skinny traps, and they just die.
And it's more aerodynamic.
That's true.
Yeah, that's good too.
Narrow bars, free speed.
5 grams lighter.
That's it. Right. Well, one way that you can do it is if you're on a mountain bike and you look at your gloves or your grips and where your grips are being worn out. And if your hands always feel like they're off the edge of your bars, then maybe you do need wider bars. But if you notice that you're like always, you have like a couple centimeters to spare on the end of the grip with where you grab, then you probably don't have to go that wide. Right. So, and the easiest way without cutting your bars, like Nate said, is just to grab differently on your handlebars and see how it feels.
You can even like slide your brakes and everything in a little bit to test it. Like obviously be wary of trees and stuff, but like you can slide your brakes in a little, like a centimeter, and like see how that feels. And if it feels good, then you can cut them down if you're not going to use that extra width.
It's a good tip.
Pro tips.
If you like this video, make sure you give us a thumbs up.
If you didn't like this video, you can give it a thumbs down, but let us know what you would have done differently in the comments below.
If you want to see more of these videos, make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. And if you want to become a faster cyclist, check out TrainerRoad.com.
Do it.
If you think I have better hair than Jonathan, give it a thumbs up. If not, leave a comment.
My hair is better than his.